So we're going to go through the questions, and then if you can ask your questions at the end, I'd really appreciate it, just so that we don't break the momentum. Not to discourage you to ask questions. You can by all means continue putting them in the chat, and we can handle them at the end of the webinar. But yeah, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask now, but I think we must get started. And the sooner the better, because Mercy's got a lot to tell us, right?
I hope so. Yes, I hope so.
Of course. Okay, so let me start with, for those that don't know me, I often get told that I'm a little bit of a hidden secret. I was hoping that wasn't the case with all my social posts and everything, but working on that. I'm Cape Town born and bred, and fortunately live in one of the best cities in the world. In fact, voted as the second best tourist destination in the world, believe it or not. I've done a lot of traveling across Africa, but I've also attended World Employer Branding Day in Prague, the first that happened, and done quite a bit of traveling across Africa as well, consulting and training there. I love doing conference discussions and presentations and getting up close and personal with my people. And as the founder of Employer Branding Africa, my drive and my mission is to actually transform your traditional talent acquisition specialists to that of employer brand marketers, and basically assist our talent leaders with missed opportunities when it comes to employer branding and recruitment marketing and personal branding. Last year, I started the Employer Branding Learning Academy, which was basically to empower leaders, putting the tools into their hands in order to be able to make it that much more accessible and doable when it comes to making that shift from a conventional transactional marketing sales type of advisory role. So that's a little bit of background on myself. And over to you, Mercy.
I always find it very weird for me to introduce myself, but I'll give it a stab. So my name is Mercy Chigoma. I think most of the people on the call are quite familiar with me. I started off my career way back in 2009, and I started from an agency perspective, and then I moved on into corporate roles, and I've moved in corporate in different companies or regions or industries as well. I had a stint in retail recently. I also had a stint in engineering professional services, which I am back now at Zutari. I've also worked for consumer insights companies. I've also had exposure in the mining industry. So my exposure in talent acquisition is across multiple industries, so to say. And I also had the privilege of working across multiple locations, having had reporting into a company based in the United States. I had the opportunity to report directly into Houston. I also had an opportunity to report directly into a company based in the UK and also in South Africa. And why I'm mentioning that is it gives you a sense of what kind of exposure did I get in my career for me to be able to talk into or to weigh in into some of these discussions, because those countries or areas that I reported into were quite advanced in some of the issues that we are trying to now solve for. So that gave me that insight and it developed my passion. And I think why I'm very passionate about recruitment marketing or building an employer brand and a personal brand as an individual in talent acquisition is when I started off in agency, I was speaking to one of my cousins and I said to him, I'm a recruiter. And he said, oh, you know, that role is really nothing. You guys are parking lot attendants. And it gave me a view of how people actually perceive us. And he says, oh, you guys are always calling me and, you know, there's nothing you add value to us. You just find our CVs and you call us. And I said, I wanted to make it my lifetime commitment to bring some professionalism to how people view us, to tell a different narrative about what is talent acquisition and who's a talent acquisition specialist, and really to bring that we represent a brand, we are the face of the company, and how do you embody that? So yeah, I think that
It's wonderful. Thank you, Mercy. And I think, I mean, that's what attracted me so much to you, because you have got so many angles to provide in terms of not just the companies and the industry sector, but also the different demographics that, you know, the overseas territories are quite different to the African markets, and the challenges as well as the success stories that you have to offer. And I think you also have been an internal recruiter. You've worked for a recruitment agency as well. So you've been on the outside, and you've also been, and still are, on the inside, which does add a lot of value to this discussion. Wonderful. All right. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you can just give me an indication of whether, I'm going to launch a poll now, and it's really around, can you see it? The utilization of the EVP and employer branding in talent acquisition. Can you see that poll, everyone? So I won't say because Mercy is also just as curious as I am in terms of understanding to what degree you're currently utilizing your employer value proposition and your employer brand within your talent acquisition efforts, because that's always a good way. It's a good departure point, and it's a good start to this discussion, so that we can know what direction we are heading in terms of providing you with the valuable insights and the knowledge sharing today. Yeah? Okay. So we've got quite a big cohort of individuals that are aware of the importance, but they are really applying it. We've got a mix of partially, so we've got 50%, 33% partially, and fully 17%, which is quite comforting to note. And it's interesting to see that people have already realized the merits behind utilizing the EVP and one's employer brand, interweaving it through your recruitment process and your talent acquisition strategies. Okay. So I think, Mercy, now that we've had our group giving us an indication of where they sort of pitch themselves when it comes to embracing employer branding and their EVP, I'd love to get an indication what the 3 key ways are in which you believe employer branding and recruitment marketing have significantly boosted your talent acquisition strategies. And it doesn't necessarily have to be within Zutari. It could be generally across your industry sectors and the territories that you've actually worked in.
Okay. Thank you, Celeste. I was laughing this morning saying I'm really going to be interviewed today. So I'm going to try and do justice to this. And of course, this comes from my experience, right? So I think for me, the 3 key ways that I can say in which employer branding and recruitment marketing significantly boosted our talent acquisition strategy is starting off with really understanding what is talent acquisition. I think that's the biggest thing. So that shift from moving from being recruitment focused to being a talent acquisition individual, building capability, and then understanding that talent acquisition is actually an extension of business. It has some relation to how a business operates. And I think if some of the people on the call reported to me in their past lives, they know that I speak about this a lot, where I say, if you look at a business, it has a marketing function, right? It has a finance function, and everything is linking directly into the business strategy to drive value. Talent acquisition is similar, and more so from a marketing perspective, where as a recruiter, you need to understand, number one, what is the product that I'm selling and why am I selling it? Who am I trying to attract and why am I trying to attract that? And how you can only do that is really understanding what your employer brand is. What is your talent acquisition? What is your talent brand? What is your employer value proposition? So from an employer branding perspective, I would say the first key thing is that helped our strategy is building an effective brand reputation. So one of the biggest things that we had to do is really start showcasing our company culture, our values, our employee experience through various channels. So I can take you back to a time where I was at a company called Cantor, and they were new, they were not new to South Africa, but not a lot of people knew that who Cantor was. And to me, it was okay. If I am trying to sell Cantor as a company to individuals in the South African market, we were big in the Middle East, we were big in America and everywhere else. But here, some of our competitors like Ipsos and Nelson were better from a talent brand perspective, and we didn't have that. So one of the things that I did is I sat with my CEOs, because I had regional CEOs, and I say to them, we need to craft a value proposition, a candidate value proposition, which says, why would you join Cantor? And in that is we needed to elevate things like what is our company policy? What is our company culture? From a reward perspective, what could an individual expect to be rewarded when they join our company? And what did it look like from a life inside our organization? So I did that where I partnered with my CEOs, because first principle to me was these are the people that lead our business, and they need to have a voice in articulating why join our company. Most recently at Massmart, my team and my team, they were exceptional individuals. What we did is we did what we called a competitor analysis. Why we did that is we really wanted to make and see, benchmark Massmart and see whether or not we were competing at the same level as our competitors from a talent perspective. So it was firstly understanding what are they doing better than us? Why would people join a ShopRite instead of a Massmart? Why are people joining Woolworths? Why are people joining, anyone else apart from Massmart? And that was quite successful, because we started to understand what is everybody offering that we're not, and how do we now start competing in that kind of space. And we had difficulties in finding people like merchandisers, and we really needed to get to the crux of that. So through that, we understood, okay, what is our brand reputation externally? Do people want to join Massmart? Do people want to join Cantor? And then we started shaping a story, and our story was now much more aligned to why I was raising the story around talent acquisition being similar to business. Is we then also started building, we understood our market. Okay, who's in our market? What is the talent that we're going for? And is that talent available? Where are our skills shortages from a business perspective? And what is the push and pull of the individuals that we want to hire in those critical talent segments? Similarly to how business would segment market in terms of the product that you're trying to offer, that's what we did. And we built what we call candidate personas. And in that, we understood, okay, who is it that we want to target? Why do we want to target it? And how do we start now creating a message? How do we start creating a targeted message that would resonate with those people that we are looking for? So merchandisers, for instance, the individuals that are generally in stores, and most companies have a reputation of saying, if you are a merchandiser for baby products, you're going to stick to baby. But we then said, okay, from a Massmart perspective, what we want to do is we want to say a merchandiser is a merchandiser. So anyone can be a merchandiser. And we crafted that in our storyline to say, come to Massmart, and whether you are coming from a baby merchandising category, you can now go into coffee or food, So we started curating specific targeted messages so that our individuals can understand. And then engagement and interaction, right? From there, we built candidate personas for the different careers or roles that we're struggling with. And we really understood what makes a merchandiser apply for jobs. What is the messaging that they would like to hear? What is our competitors offering them that we are not? We crafted something, we engaged with reward to see how do we start rewarding these individuals better? Are we going to give them allowances, or how are we going to do it? So we did that. So I can say, Celeste, the three things that I would say significantly boosted our talent acquisition strategy for attracting high demand talent is, number one, we started building brand reputation, understanding how do people view our brand? What is the push and pull for those critical roles that we're looking at? And how do you start curating stories that speak into those people? So the second thing is we created targeted messages. And then from an engagement perspective, we created polls. We even went to conferences or sessions that we knew those particular individuals were, and we started curating engagements that were in line with that. I hope that answers you.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. And I think those three factors are actually, they are critical, absolutely critical. I think those are the real objectives that one has to always set into place before you even embark on a talent acquisition strategy, which is to actually, again, understand and stock take your departure point. What is it? And if you don't know what you're working with, how do you in fact know where you are heading? And a lot of that is often misconstrued, needs to be validated, needs to be unpacked before you start building the talent acquisition strategy and your pathway. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for highlighting those factors, definitely. All right, I'm cognizant of time here. So are you still able to see my presentation? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So initiating and leveraging missed opportunities. So given the critical role of employer branding and recruitment marketing in talent acquisition, what steps do you recommend for talent leaders to initiate and effectively leverage these strategies? And I suppose this is more from a practical operational perspective, Mercy, because I know you've spoken very much from a strategic perspective, but this is about what steps can our talent leaders basically do to leverage these strategies from the get-go kind of thing.
All right. Okay. So Celeste, I think for me, the first thing, and this is as leaders, right? We need to understand who is driving this. And I think it's the team, it's the talent acquisition team, or if you're a talent acquisition specialist, you are the individual who's driving the strategy. You are the face of the company. Like I said, your responsibility is to sell the brand. You position your company value proposition to individuals. So the work starts with you. You need to have buy-in in the product that you're selling. You need to be, in Zutari, we say you need to be Zutified. And that happens during the onboarding process where you actually understand what is the company culture, what kind of individual should be joining the company, and then what are we offering? What is the day employee in your company? And then being being convicted so much that you can sell that brand. And I think from a leadership perspective, what I always challenge myself with my recruitment team is I always try to make them feel like they're the most valuable thing in the company. Because generally recruiters, we are kind of disregarded by everybody because our role, again, is to fill bums and seats. And that poses a challenge because you are so discontented. You cannot sell a story to anybody because you're saying, why would I bring somebody into a company that treats us like this? So I think the work starts with you. The work starts with us as leaders of talent acquisition to make our people see that they play a strategic value they have a strategic role to play in the business, which is we are at a unique vantage point of engaging people from attraction until they actually exit the business. We are the golden thread that is in the business, and our ability to tell a story of who we work for and being proud enough to work for that organization is a game changer. So that's one thing that I just wanted to get out of the way. And then I think from what do we need to do this? The first thing is you need to audit your existing employer brand, right? So an employer brand, generally people say it's external facing. It's really the process of creating internal value proposition, internal reputation. What is your internal reputation? How do your employees view you? It's multiple layers. How are your policies? What programs are you offering? What does reward look like? Can your employees say you are offering them a good deal, right? And for me, that's quite important. You need to audit your employer brand and see whether or not you're meeting your own employees' needs and that. So how do you audit your existing employer brand? You can send out surveys to the internal employees. I know we all do employee engagement surveys. They are telltale signs of, they can give you some insights as well, especially the ENPS score. Sorry, I'm not good with abbreviations. So you can send out surveys, you can conduct informal interviews with your employees. You can run focus groups, because what you want to get to is you want to understand what is our current employer brand reputation. Can we actually create ambassadors for our company that will help us in our recruitment marketing initiatives? You also need to look at what people are saying about you on social media channels or on platforms like Glassdoor. I visit Glassdoor a lot, and even when people are looking for jobs, they visit your Glassdoors, your Indeed, to just see what is this company about. And from a leadership perspective, a lot of people are now actually going to check out what is this leader about, right? Because the old saying goes, people join leaders, not companies. You also need to read reviews of your company on your employer or on employer reviewing sites like Glassdoor, as I said. And I also identified when I was at Liberty, a lot of people would actually engage on our website, but no one had taken time to actually go and see what kind of messages are coming through. And for me, it has always been a passion of mine to check, okay, whose contact details are on our career site and what is the communication that is coming through. That's where you find a lot of people saying, oh, I haven't gotten feedback from talent acquisition for a while, and all those sorts of things. That's where they send their feedback. So review emails that are coming directly from your website. What are people saying when they engage with you? The second thing is you really need to review your recruitment process, because your recruitment process is your engagement tool with individuals. So start from your job posting. Are your job postings in line with, like I said, the exercise that we did at Massmart around talent, around creating candidate personas? We wanted to ensure that our job postings were not generic, but they were now speaking into the individuals that we're trying to recruit and having a why should you join Massmart at that point? What is the value proposition for you joining us? So your job postings are quite important. And also just making sure there are no spelling mistakes. From a gender equity perspective, you're not using strong language. And I think Europe and America, they're quite big on these things. When you're using the message that you use in your job posting should be kind of subtle. You can't say solid. And I love the word solid. So I've challenged myself not to use that a lot. And then from an application process, what does your application process look like? Is it not tedious? What are the triggers that your system is sending? Is it appealing to the different generations that we now have, the Gen Zs, the millennials? What is that languaging looking like? And from a diversity perspective as well, is it accessible to all the people that you are trying to attract? I operate in multiple countries. My challenge is, are my adverts being translated? If I'm then going to post on local job boards, what does that look like? And then also, if I'm posting jobs internally, what does that look like? And then also offer stage. What is your messaging from when you send out offers? And how efficient and effective is your system? Because we end up being bogged down in just the mechanics of doing things, but not actually understanding the moments that matter in that process. And how do we elevate the experience for an individual? How do you roll out the red carpet? So I always find myself reviewing systems, even the trigger notifications that go out to people, looking at how do you get integrated systems that start, having better imagery when we send out offer letters. I have made decisions in the past where I actually switch off the entire ATS messaging component because it wasn't really curating the kind of content that I would have liked. So it's quite important to ask yourself questions like, is our brand clear to candidates in the entire process? And also, are our behaviors aligned with what we're trying to portray externally? Because recruiters, we often have a bad reputation not getting back to people. There you need to think, okay, do we need to have an automated message around telling people if you don't hear from us within 2 weeks, we're not getting back to you? It's those simple things that are that give us a knock on our employer brand as well. So you really need to understand what are you putting in that entire process and how are you elevating moments that matter and what is the messaging that you're putting through. Does the experience accurately show individuals what it is like to work in your organization? So for instance, I joined one company before, and the talent acquisition administrator called me at like 9 p.m. asking me for my reference details. It said to me, I asked a simple question to myself. Number one, as a leader, I'm quite empathetic with my employees. Like I said to myself, if I join this team, I'm going to fix this. I can't have my talent acquisition administrators calling me at 9 p.m. It says to me that there is no work-life balance. And it could have been a candidate. And I saw to it, I joined the company, but I saw to it that I changed that. The first question I asked is, why were you calling me at 9? What it said to me as an employee is you could work overtime, right? And you also need to say to yourself, is the admin process efficient and smooth? Are we attracting people that are also aligned to our values? So I think for me, Celeste, those are the kind of things that you need to do to ensure that you're leveraging off EB and RM quite effectively. Those are some of the steps that you need to take.
Wow, that was a lot. That was a lot, Mercy. Very thorough. Thanks for that. And I think once again, it is again, I think with the onslaught of AI and automation and everything, I think just added to what you've said there, I think it's also about being mindful on where do we actually lean into AI to ensure that we remain authentic as well through the whole process, whether it be an external, the candidate recruitment process, or whether it be the employee engagement process, just so that you're not losing touch to the mechanics and you're not robotically going through the process. And as you say, Mercy, it's, you know, the talent acquisition leaders are the ones that actually drive that relatability, that personal authenticity, as you say. And I can't talk to all those points because there was a lot there, but a lot of gold. And I'm sure our attendees absolutely loved that information. So yeah, it is about the whole value chain. It is about the delivery mechanism from start to finish and the moments that matter throughout the process. Thank you.
Yeah. And Celeste, once we go to the next question, I just wanted to elevate a point. You mentioned AI, right? And there is absolute value in AI, especially in the work that we do as recruiters. But what it is aiding us to do is we had a lot of administrative tasks that were bogging us down, right? Our role is relational. We need to elevate, like I said, the moments that matter, and we need to talk to people. So we need to look at AI as an administrator, adding on to our supporting us from an administrative perspective. But that doesn't say that we don't need to put a voice and a unique touch into what we do. Yeah.
Completely aligned, Denise. Thank you. I'm cognizant of time, so let's have a look at this next question, which is really about taking it into our territory around our African markets, considering, you know, we're looking at employer branding Africa and how we deliver as talent acquisition specialists, although there are obviously TA specialists that service the international market as well. But we've got our own challenges. We've got opportunities. We've got challenges within our markets. What key considerations should be made when it comes to crafting employer branding and recruitment marketing strategy? Now, I can answer from my side, but I would, you know, I don't want to take too much airtime here, Mercy. I value your input. Obviously, we do, you know, our territory is unique. We've got our own nuances in that. How do you think, or what do you think we need to take into account when it comes to crafting our TA strategies for our African markets?
Thank you, Celeste. I think for me, you know, what they say, what can I say? Not everything shiny should be, you can't adopt everything that you see is happening internationally, because we always look at international markets for the latest and most trending thing, and we want to adopt that. I think understanding the maturity of where we are as an African market is always important. Our geopolitical situation is kind of different. Access to a lot of things is kind of different in Africa. So that's the first point, right? To say, be discerning enough to know that whatever is happening in America cannot be applied here. I was on a round table recently, and they were talking about phasing out college degrees. But then when you look in the African context, we have a challenge where we have a high unemployment rate. There are a lot of people who are degreed that actually do not have employment. So if I then say I'm scraping that out, how am I going to ensure that there is fair competitiveness to people getting into the commercial space, right? So I think that's one thing, to understand the maturity of where we are in whatever we do, and then ensuring that we start there and always be brilliant at basic. Anything basic is still good as long as it's done effectively. So one thing that we must also be mindful of is cultural sensitivity. This goes without saying. Africa is diverse. South Africa is a rainbow nation. Local customs, languages, the traditions of our potential candidates are all kind of different. So when it then comes to employer branding, your policies, the way you reward, I mean, if you look at pay parity, the benefits that we offer, They are different per country if you are privileged enough to be managing multiple countries, and also the individuals that we are dealing with in the business, like I mentioned before, the multiple generations that we currently have. And now we are going to have the fifth generation entering into our workforce. What they like is kind of different. And then coupled with the region that we operate in, that's something that we should be culturally sensitive. And then also take into consideration infrastructure and connectivity. And here it's more about understanding that there are people that are cut out of competing in the economic landscape because they do not have things like access to the digital landscape. So leveraging of LinkedIn as a platform that you advertise jobs or where you engage content is not the only solution. You need to diversify. You need to look at going back to the newspaper. That's going back to basics. Understanding what channels. Yes, Liz?
No, I'm agreeing with you completely.
So it's understanding the digital landscape and what each market, how do you, back to the marketing analogy that I said, market access, how do you access and penetrate different markets that you're operating in from a talent acquisition perspective, as well similarly to how business would consider going in with a new product in different countries in Africa. They do it differently. I mean, if you look at Coca-Cola, it's packaged differently than when I travel to Zimbabwe or somewhere else. It looks kind of different, but it's understanding the market. So that's similar to us as well, understanding your infrastructure, the delivery channels that you use, where are you going to advertise, how are you going to advertise, to who and why. And then localizing content and messaging is quite important. And then when in your messaging also, you must be savvy enough to emphasize stability and growth in every market that you're operating. I mean, now I also work in Saudi Arabia, and I'm trying to understand that market and what candidates like in that market. And they're not interested in money because they have the money. So I now need to think about that to say, how do I ensure that a Saudi national joins Zutari in that market? What is it that is going to attract them to Zutari? And for me, we are part of the biggest project in the region, the NEOM project. Become and be part of your heritage and help us build this. So I am localizing content and understanding my product to say this is what would pull it in. And from a diversity and inclusion perspective, this we all know because the unique scenario in South Africa enables us to understand that quite importantly. And then ensuring that that content speaks to those different and diverse people that we're trying to recruit. So I think, Celeste, for me, it's really localized content, emphasizing stability and growth, or really understanding the messaging that you want to put across in that particular market. If I'm recruiting someone in Nigeria, their needs are quite different. How I position my employee value proposition to them is different. In the context of where I am now, I need to ensure that when I speak to potential people in any other location other than South Africa that are in Africa, I am saying you are going to be part of design implementation. Because the biggest worry of my target market is, if I'm not in the head office, am I going to be doing valuable work? So it's really understanding what is the messaging that is going to resonate with the people that I am contacting in that is my language localized enough? Am I putting at the center of what I am doing, but I'm not making it as if you are a token, because we have a lot of issues, especially here in South Africa, where you have senior leadership that I would approach and say, oh, I want you to be part of my recruitment marketing campaign. I want to showcase that we have Black female. Like, Mercy, I don't like that you're making me seem like I am a token. To what you said about being authentic. And then I would say, no, you're not a token. That's not the approach that I'm taking. But I really want to tell a story that says, you can come through. You are doing great things. Come through, So it's about understanding the dynamics of the country that you're operating in, being authentic, tailor making your messaging that so that it resonates with people's customs, language, and tradition, and ensuring that you stay on the brand. Your brand is authentic. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay. And yes, we are in a very unique region, and I think localizing the employer brand, I think, is a big problem when it comes to multinationals that enter into our African territory. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there. I think that I personally don't think we've got it right, especially especially if you've got overseas outfits that don't understand the African territory, the uniqueness across all the different countries and that within. But thank you.
Yeah, so just on that point that you just raised, I just wanted to touch in a little bit. It's always global first. You need to look at it like this. If you're working for a global company, it's local all the time, local when necessary, global as and when. So the global will direct you from a policy perspective and say, this is what the global policy looks like. But it's global when necessary, but local always. You then need to say to yourself, as a talent acquisition leader, does what global has prescribed apply to the country that I'm operating in, and where do I tweak? And you need to have a voice to push back and say it will not work in South Africa. And Correct. It's because legislation, codes of good practice, our cultural norms, and this and this. So it's global first, but local when or always. Global first. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, I'm moving through this. I don't want to talk too much because I want to give you the floor as far as possible, Mercy. So just on the next question, avoiding the pitfalls. Obviously, things aren't always smooth running, especially if you are a founder organization or if you are taking over a new role as a TA where you've got the hierarchy saying, listen, we need you to position our employer brand more intentionally. And with employer branding being a living organism and the fact that nothing is cast in concrete, there's common pitfalls that organizations do make when it comes to either developing or executing on one's employer brand and one's recruitment marketing strategy. Maybe just give me one or two areas that sort of stand out commonly for you across the various organizations that you've worked in, that you pitfall.
Yeah, so I think pitfall from the first one is really understanding the value of unlocking employer branding initiatives and then activating, recruitment marketing strategies. It's just a lack of understanding of how that can actually add value to a business, and more so not knowing where that function could actually lie in an organization. I mean, if your headcount is lesser than 2,000, it's easier because you can just build a committee and you put a team together and people start focusing on building, answering the question, what is our employee value proposition? But if it's a bigger organization and you've got multiple departments, you've got talent acquisition, you've got learning and development, you've got HR, then you've got business, where do we house employer branding is always a challenge. And then people just thinking it's fluffy, it's influencer stuff. Why would you want to do that? We have pressing priorities, we need to cut head count. So not placing enough value and understanding the return on investment of that is one of the common pitfalls that I find. And from a talent acquisition leadership perspective is then our inability to rise above the noise. I have multiple roles. I need to fill bums in seats. Now you want me to go out and do influencer things. But what can I say? It's a seemingly not important thing to do, but it's the basis. That's where you need to start. Because like I said, you're selling a product. And as a company, we are thought leaders in engineering. We are selling solutions around how you build teams and roles. The first thing we do is we need to be clear on what product are we selling. Similarly to when you want to recruit people, you need to be clear on what is your organization and who should join your organization. So I think it's that lack of understanding that you can't separate employer branding. So I think that's those are two things that come to mind. Not understanding where to host it in the business, where does it sit? And then also not really understanding the value and what value can you unlock with that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, completely. And Mercy, to your point, the reality is that employer branding almost gets placed on someone's job description as a line item without the focus and the attention that it deserves. And therein lies the problem. So the actual cell behind it is so important in order to get that understanding from, the powers that be, especially when it comes to what you said. It can't be looked at as a hot and fluffy. And I think Keisha can relate to this quite nicely as well. The fact that there is value add, there is return on investment in that, and it's about proving that as well, so that you don't avoid those pitfalls when you are sort of rolling with the punches.
And I think, I think Celeste is always seen as a cost. It's a cost, right? So why would you want to? It's a cost. So let's move away from it. But like I said, it's important to really understand what are the basics that you might implement and get brilliant at them. Most of us have the LinkedIn platform. Have you really explored that platform and seen the and unlock the value that it can bring to you, right? And what I also wanted to say is the employer branding is not a one-man show. It's about educating the business on how they are ambassadors, and how do they elevate their profiles on LinkedIn. And I know you guys know this, right? And LinkedIn is this rock my profile thing that they talk about, but it's about having each individual in the organization understanding that they are an ambassador and it's their role to elevate our talent brand, right? So easy things like having a professional photo on your LinkedIn page, being a thought leader in a particular area that you like, and linking it back to your company's hashtag, just start building content around that. So it's really about understanding what are the low-hanging fruits. There's no money that you would need to put into some of these things, but it's about saying, how do I become an ambassador myself? How do I amplify the manager and employees' voices by creating generic, natural content, bringing in authenticity? You don't even need to book a whole studio to put videos together. You can use your phone, because if you see, we're always on TikTok, you're on Instagram, people are sending authentic, generic content out there. Just take a video of people sitting in the boardroom having a meeting. You don't need to have lipstick and everything, So for me, it's really understanding that it shouldn't be, you already have a marketing department for bigger organizations. How do you leverage off them? I always challenged all my marketing departments wherever I've joined to say, please help us do this. How can you help me? How quickly can you do this for me, right? So yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And once again, to your point, a lot of people actually don't realize that they're sitting with so much. They've got the channels, they've got so much that resides within their organization. It's about how to cleverly evolve it without incurring too much additional expense. I think that's really, again, where to start, which dovetails very nicely into the next question, which is really around measurables and return on investment. And, the question around how do you measure the success of an employer brand and a recruitment marketing initiative within your talent acquisition? And, what are those metrics that are telling? Now, you get the generic, and I understand that there's not one shoe that fits all. It obviously is very dependent on your organization and very dependent on decision makers saying, okay, so Mercy, you want this money to put within talent acquisition strategy. What is the return on investment going to be for me? And how do you intend measuring? And I do understand that it's a chicken and egg situation, because if you've got nothing in place, how do you justify that? So what are your views in terms of, the sort of quick measurables and return on investment in order to justify implementing employer branding or additional, how can I say, enablers within your talent acquisition strategy to make it happen?
Okay. So I think we all know that if you have a LinkedIn page, or back then when you'd have a face platform, the one thing that you'd measure is obviously the number of people that are visiting your site. So it's candidate engagement. How many people are actually engaging with your brand, right? When you post, what is the click to ratio? So you look at that as something that you always start with the baseline. right? Before you start your initiative, you look at what are the numbers from an applicant perspective, or people visiting your site. What does that number look like? So you start from 100. When you then start doing initiatives, you give yourself like 6 months. You start seeing what is the growth around people who are following you, or people that are actually engaging with the content that you're sending out. If you post an advert, you actually look at how many people have actually viewed that, and it's nice that platforms like LinkedIn actually give you stats around that. And then from there, you start telling a story to your business to say, look, this initiative, this is how we collaborated with a marketing team. We built boilerplates for adverts. We are not advertising roles per se anymore, but we have this boilerplates that we're sending out, and the click to application rate is this much. So it's that. And then looking at how long is it taking you to fill particular roles. So you can only measure specifically if you have a particular role that you have kind of said, let's strategically focus on merchandising, for instance. And then you look at the job adverts that you have designed. What is from an awareness perspective, how many people are visiting? How many people are then actually engaging with you from an interest? How many people have applied? And how long is it actually taking you to fill that role? So it's a lot of things, Celeste. And then I always say you need to be quite simple, because you can't go to business with multiple things. So it's as simple as that, understanding where's the pain. The pain is in they cannot find structural engineers. We cannot find structural engineers. We then partner with marketing. They design something. We build a candidate persona. We understand that. They build an infographic or a nice comms around that, helping us attract that kind of target market better. We measure that. How much did it cost us? What was the time and motion time that we use, and what are the cost implications? How many people actually engaged with that post that we sent out? How many people applied? How long did it take us to actually then fill the role? So it's one simple scenario. You can't do multiple things. And then tell a story to say, look, if we were to do this for X, Y, and Z, this is the timeline that it would take us to actually fill the roles. So for me, that's how you would do it. So simply, yeah, those are the
things. Thanks for that, Mercy. And it's around managing expectations, especially if it's an educational process. To try and get buy-in as far as possible, because you almost need to massage the process to get buy-in and to show those measurables. And I think also, more importantly, to maybe start with pilot exercises in order to show your weight in gold,
So doing POCs and staying away from fancy language, right? Don't go in now. This
Exactly.
down to basics and make it tie it into strategy. Of course, we all know this, but have the language so simple that they do not say to you, this is fluffy, because they check out things that they say, okay, this is fluffy. It's not making sense, because you're trying to make it seem, it's glamorous. Just keep it simple, basic. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I mean, Lucy, you and I have spoken about this, and maybe the people on our webinar today can maybe also in the chat say, place in there what they deem to be the barriers. Slow adoption of employer branding and recruitment marketing. Is it budget constraints? Is it the gap in knowledge? Is it the time limitations? Is it just that whole change in mindset? I'd love to, please, I mean, if you can give Mercy and I an indication of this, because we've tried and proven it. And we are so passionate about the fact that it does work. We would love to convert the whole of Africa when it comes to employer branding and recruitment marketing, right, Mercy? So I would like, from an outside perspective, if you can just put it in the chat there, because we'd love to hear that. But I think, Mercy, I mean, we might have touched on this quite a bit, even in our previous discussions, but maybe you can highlight on what barriers have actually come your way when it came to get buy-in on employer branding and recruitment marketing as a best practice within the organization that we're working in?
I think it's for me, it's limited awareness and understanding and of exposure to best practices and relevant resources, and maybe misconception about the role of employer branding and talent acquisition, not seeing it as an important thing because we are all bogged down in saying we need to fill a bum seat and that's the most pressing thing. But the mechanics of how we get there isn't important. So we focus on recruiting. We focus on what is the time to fill, but the mechanics of how you get there isn't important. You need to tell a story about who are we, why are we here, come and join us, and what are you going to do becomes less important. Budget constraints, of course, because we always look at the biggest thing that we want to do first before looking at the low-hanging fruits, like I said. So everyone will think, okay, it's going to be an expenditure, right? So why would I want to invest money in this when you should be closing roles? Time limitations, right? And I think for me, from a leadership perspective, as a talent acquisition leader, I've tried to move away from asking someone how many offers have you sent out and how many positions have you filled to what are the key strategic initiatives have you done today to get you closer to the goal, right? So I want to understand, how did you engage with an individual? Did you do your recruiting, your referral campaigns? Did you go to a workshop and to a conference? What did you do? Because I understand those are the mechanics that are going to get us there in the long run. So it's not a short game, it's a long game. And you need to understand what are the things that are going to get you to there. So it's time limitations where people are bogged down with day-to-day recruiting tasks, administrative duties, and all that. So back again to where you're saying AI is going to help us is look at what are the key things that are going to help me alleviate pressure on my team, and which are the moments that matter that I must be talking to them about and elevate that, right? So it's helping your team to manage their time limitations and just not make everything about closing positions, make it exciting. And then it's moving away from that traditional mindset. It's and being resistant to change. I think one time I heard someone saying to me, "Are you an influencer?" And I was like, "Okay, really." My job is I am the face of the company. It's about I need to showcase to the external market that in my organization I am allowed to flourish, and that's it. And some people will resonate with it and will come to me. I do recruiting things at the back end, but that's more recruitment. I am a talent acquisition specialist. Talent source shortages and competition make people, you're blinded. You're just thinking, oh, we need to go quickly. Let's do this. So they slow down employer branding and initiatives, but those are the initiatives that are actually going to make you an employer of choice and stand out from the crowd. So you need to go up, get in a helicopter, have a helicopter view, rise above the noise and say, how do I think strategically? How do I tackle this instead of just doing, right? Just don't to the recruitment drive, but be strategic. And then there's complexity and resource intensiveness. Oh, we're going to be so intense. And most of my team members that I used to manage, you say, Mercy, I know you want us to do the sexy stuff, but we don't have time. Yeah. So it's about people thinking that this is extensive or there's intensity, I need to do this. But it's about having the ability to articulate those basics and make them exciting enough for them. So I think for me, and also thinking that recruitment marketing or employer branding is about posting jobs only. It's not about that.
No, there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yes.
Sorry, we're running out of time here. I hope everyone's taken down notes, but I think there's so much gold in what Mercy has shared today. For us to go through the key takeaways is going to take away from us not having time. A lot of people have fallen off the discussion already. And if there are questions, I'd rather allow them to have those questions to you, Mercy. So I'm not going to sum it up as key takeaways. You've summed it up after each question each time, which was helpful. All right, before we go on to the questions and answers, to those of you that are on the call, please feel free to go onto the Employer Branding Africa Learning Academy. You will find everything that Mercy and I are passionate about and what we've been talking about she mentioned about personal branding and how important it is to be an influencer advisor and to make that shift from transactional to that of an employer brand marketer. We spoke extensively about employer branding and recruitment marketing for talent acquisition. And then the last one is around a practical approach to how to build an employer brand if you actually don't know the steps that go into it. I wanted to launch my in-person talent acquisition masterclass, but unfortunately I still have not secured a venue. But I am in the process of doing that. So please, please, please look out for that on my social media platforms as well. I'm taking it, as Mercy said, there's nothing like doing in-person training. So I'm actually moving away from my screen, and I want to actually get up close and personal with people to start doing networking and do the knowledge sharing in person. So, all right, questions and answers. Let's just have a look at the chat. Please put your cameras on and unmute yourself and whatever you need to speak about. I'm going to put my glasses on here because my eyesight's not great.
I like Candy's question. She put it in the chat where she's asking, how do you actually incentivize employees that become brand advocates? I think, yeah, that's really a valuable question. And I can say how we did it in the past was really the employees that were generally that were in the advocacy program or committee. Number one, they were people that already had a natural following on your LinkedIn platforms or Facebook. It's something that they enjoyed doing. So they were the actual influencers already, if we were to use that language. So it's something that they enjoyed doing, and we could just leverage off that as a low-hanging fruit. But how we identified people who could also be ambassadors was looking at who's key talent. And that's a way of actually building morale and motivation and saying you're part of a bigger cause for the organization. So that's how we kind of paid back. There was no monetary value that we could actually give. And then giving kudos, recognition, because, you can recognize individual. Thank you for your efforts. But, really celebrating small wins, like how many your content, how many people engaged with your content. Oh, I had 5,000 or 15,000 impressions. Well done, etc. So that kind of thing, really recognizing them. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful. I agree. And I think, there almost needs to be an incentive attached, and there almost needs to, it's not about force feeding. It's really about almost, incentivizing and appreciating and recognizing people for going that extra mile, Mercy. And it's very important, especially if you want a few champions to drive the process as well, because it is contagious. Once you've got a few champions behind it and they can see the knock-on effect, the positivity that comes from it, it almost is contagious. There's no reason for it to ignite through the rest of your team. And again, it's about that data, the insights from those pilot exercises that you can possibly run on, for example, your civil engineering roles that you're trying to, fill, etc., etc. And it definitely, I believe that once you've ignited it, initiated it with some champions, it can only fly, honestly.
100%. It can only, and the knock-on effect is you are already creating a lifelong employee. It's somebody who understands your brand and resonates with it, and they can tell a story about it, and they feel you're retaining them and knowing.
Exactly.
So is that knock-on where I'm saying I'm doing something bigger. I'm raising eminence for my organization. We are big eminence here at Zutari. So that thing of I'm a thought leader that is recognized in my organization, and they've entrusted me to share my story externally is bigger.
Yes, exactly. Shame, we've had a few people. I think we spoke too much, Mercy. But thank you for you guys that have stayed on. Really, really appreciate it. And I think just in closing, that's my closing slide. You're welcome. There's a QR code to have a look further, explore a little bit more around employer branding. Things are only going to hotten up in this area. And, all the trusted consulting agencies are echoing this over and over again. You cannot afford to not adopt employer branding and recruitment marketing into your TA strategy, because you are going to be left behind. That is definitely is as important as leaning into AI as well. I think it almost needs to be done simultaneously, although the people that have already jumped on the bandwagon when it comes to enlightening themselves on employer branding are definitely the forerunners. But yes, I think nothing else from my side except to say, Mercy, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really, it's been an absolute wonderful journey. I love the pre-work that we've done together. You've got an amazing reputation of note. I mean, you can just see, you know, a lot of people would have liked to have been here, but I mean, the response was really, really phenomenal. But unfortunately, you know, people have got their deadlines and they've got work commitments and everything. But I've definitely made a recording, and I'll definitely share it, you know, for those people that have possibly missed out on this wonderful session. And I'm privileged, Mercy. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who made time to join.
Afternoon.